This is not a Bible drill, but I would ask you to go to Daniel chapter 6. Daniel chapter 6, the attitude of thanks. I trust that these few thoughts would be a real help to you. As we approach entering the Thanksgiving week, I really felt impressed of the Lord to look at this very serious subject of thanksgiving from God's point of view. Now, we all know 1 Thessalonians. I would imagine that might be the first verse that comes to people's mind, 1 Thessalonians 5:18. In everything give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus concerning you. We know this verse, but sometimes I think we don't understand the seriousness of it. This business of giving genuine thanks, it says, is God's will. It's his plan. It's his way of knowing our heart and the way we are to be serious about sharing our heart with him. This avenue of thanksgiving. You see, there's a relationship through thanks that we are to have with God. Every day we are to be practicing this. James says in James 4:15, for what ye ought to say, if the Lord will, we shall live and do this or that. Every day we need to walk thankfully, knowing that we're doing the Lord's will. We are to express our walk with God, our heart to him in this way of thanksgiving. Ephesians 6:6, not with eye service as men pleasers, but as servants of Christ, doing the will of God from the heart. You see, so many Christians think, oh, I forgot to thank the Lord. And then you just kind of add that on as an afterthought after God does something. So many times we miss the seriousness of giving because they don't know that this is God's will. I hope tonight you understand that this is a real relationship that shows your heart. Your thanks shows your heart to God. And tonight I want to show you someone who really understood this, and we see the results in his life. It's not hard to thank God when everything's going smooth and well in life. But it's when difficulty arises, when things seem to be going as wrong could be, then it becomes a different story to genuinely thank the Lord. Say, Lord, thank you for, and then you call out a tragedy. You call out something that's wrong or difficult. We are quick to talk of God's blessings, but it is not but is it not God just as much God when he allows the hard things and the difficult things and experiences in our life? He's just as much God. He's just as much in charge of our life when things are going well as when things are going bad. We don't need to see this the wrong way. Look at this in this way. We need to understand that this relationship in thanksgiving is for us. The word of the Lord says here in 2 Timothy 3:1, this know ye also, that in the last days perilous times will come. And I think about this verse 2, for men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful and unholy. Being unthankful is a growing characteristic in the last days of our land. People are so absorbed in their own living, so busy in their own business, so concerned about me, that so often they forget that there is a God to thank. People, especially unsaved people, give themselves credit for the things that they enjoy in life. Notice in 2 Timothy 3:2, the selfishness that is in the attitude, and we see it here. In Romans 1, because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imagination, and their foolish heart was darkened. It's a very bad mistake to purposefully ignore and not thank the Lord. Selfishness blinds and causes people to miss many of the blessings that God has for them. Give, it says, and it shall be given unto you. That's true with thanksgiving as well. The secret of being thankful is to put the Lord first and trust him that he's watching over all that he provides you. You know, it's interesting, we see these characteristics so very clearly in the Old Testament character of Daniel. The scripture says that Daniel has an excellent spirit, not said by very many people at all in the Bible. It's an overflowing spirit. Daniel had the grace to trust the Lord and express it by putting him first in his life. Gabriel, who is an angel, said this of Daniel. He said, "Thou art greatly beloved." Not many people have an angel telling us about their life, but it is true with Daniel. Yes, Daniel was a sinner, but the Bible does not record any of Daniel's wrong that he did. So we need to understand how Daniel did this, his attitude, his spirit, and he explains it, or he expresses it in the hard times of life. That's what makes the story so interesting. Follow with me verse number 4. You're at Daniel chapter 6. Look with me at verse number 4. Daniel was a victim of those that he worked with. Then the presidents and the princes sought to find occasion against Daniel concerning the kingdom, but they could find none occasion nor fault, for as much as he was faithful, neither was there any error or fault found in him. These men work in the national affairs of the country here, and they became jealous of Daniel and desirous to trap him because he looked so good. He had done so well, and they had not. No one appreciated Daniel's life. They all worked in making his life as miserable as they possibly could. Oh, they professed allegiance, but avoided his presence and tried to embarrass him in every way that they could. You've all worked in the workplace. You understand what poor relationships with people are. The violence of jealousy is very cruel. This terrible sin knows no limit at all when somebody's jealous. It will stoop very low for gratification, and we see that here in the story. Although he was their victim in this evil spirit and work, Daniel's excellent spirit lifted him above their wrong thinking and way. And in the face of terrible opposition, Daniel found occasion to give thanks to the Lord. Now, please learn that when you find yourself the object of jealousy, do as Daniel did. And 3 times daily, he was on his knees praying and asking God to help him and to thank God for his keeping and his power in his life. He praised him for the tests of life that kept him close. I'm convinced that Daniel thanked the Lord for this because he felt it kept him closer to God than ever before. There was a divine purpose in each trial and test that comes our way. Daniel understood that. We need to learn to give thanks even when friends and coworkers let us down. God is always faithful to us. Look at the second one tonight, and that's difficulty. Difficulty. The following, as we follow this deceitful action, we see it added difficulty. Look with me at verse 5. Then said these men, "We shall not find any occasion against this Daniel, except we find it against him concerning the law of his God." They couldn't find anything personally wrong, so they said, well, we'll just attack his religion. Of course, they did not have a love for God and didn't realize what they were doing. A man's relationship with God is the most precious thing that he has. When convictions are messed up, it is a difficult time in life. How thankful we should be that our nation grants us still the freedom to worship. Life would be very hard and miserable if this freedom was taken away. Would we still worship? Would we still gather? Verse 5 contains a great testimony regarding Daniel. Everyone, all of those that he worked with and in many branches of leadership knew him as what? A man of God. from his testimony. The question, would he yield? What belief would Daniel set aside so that he could get by this test and not have to get into the lion's den? How low would he lay? And would he not pray for 30 days? This was everything that was being asked. Well, we see this was just the opposite. It was a very hard test, and yet it simply provided Daniel the platform to show how much he loved the Lord and to keep on saying thank you. What if Daniel would not have prayed? What if they didn't find him praying? What would you think of Daniel? You'd say, well, Pastor, he would lose all of his testimony. Remember, it's just not for him, it's for us as well. When these things happen to us, when we compromise, when we give in, people don't think as much of us nor the Lord. 2 Corinthians 4:17 and 18. Let me just read it to you. It says, for our light affliction which is but for a moment, worketh for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory, while we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. I hope that you have that ability. Daniel didn't really look at the problem. He looked at his relationship with the Lord. He felt that was the most important thing that he had in his life. So why give up the most important thing to me? That was his train of thought. The Christian life is not free from trouble. Without a doubt, there will be many disappointments and struggles. Daniel gives a wonderful example of showing the spirit of thanksgiving through these. The third one, darkness. It is a very heavy, dark day when these men set the trap by which they felt they would silence Daniel. Look with me at verse 6. Then these presidents and princes assembled together to the king and said unto him, King Darius, live forever. All the presidents of the kingdom, the governors, the princes, the counselors, and the captains have consulted together to establish a royal statute and to make a firm decree that whosoever shall ask a petition of any god or man for 30 days, save of thee, O king, he shall be cast into the den of lions. Let me ask you, was that true? That was not true. Not all of the presidents, not everybody was on board. We know because they didn't ask Daniel, and he's the head guy. So they bypassed him. And so they made up a lie here. Seeing they could not trip him up, they felt they would trap him. So here's the plot. You just read it right here. And they were trying they touched a button on this king that it would be very difficult. They touched the pride button. You mean, I'm the only one? And it kind of went to his head, the authority. And indeed here, he bit the bait. Daniel teaches us that a Christian is to do the same thing, whether it's light or dark in your life. There is not the slightest indication that Daniel left the actions of these men, let the actions of these men or the plan they had devised bother him. We don't sense that in reading the story. Now, it may have been something he pondered, but it didn't affect his what he did. Thanksgiving and prayer were a relationship that Daniel had with God. This relationship went back a long way and deeply rooted in the relationship he had with God. Please note, this isn't the first time Daniel prayed when things weren't going his way. As a young man, we meet him in chapter 1, something just around late teens, early 20s. He told the most powerful man in the world he wasn't going to eat what he wanted him to. He told him politely, he told him kindly, but he said, I'm not going to do this. He prayed much about it. He got his heart ready, and he took a step to stick with the Lord. And notice how that continued to play out in his life. He did the same thing every time trouble came because God was always with him. Even in the dark days, Daniel was extremely thankful to God. He was thankful for the Word of God and the precious promises that he could hold on to. And again, folks, this is for us. Here Daniel found light and direction and comfort and hope when all around him looked bad. He was thankful for the consciousness of being a child of God and the privilege of asking his God for help that no one could take. You know, you can kneel on your knees and you can talk to God and you could ask him anything, and nobody can take that from you. And you set the wheels of the God of the universe going on your behalf, it doesn't make any difference what other people say. He was thankful to be an ambassador for God. He knew the God of the universe would stand by him. How? Well, he had faithfully stood by him all of his life. You know, Bible scholars feel Daniel is about 80 years old when this takes place. He's not a young man. He's not 25. Time had rolled along. He'd gone through, worn out several kings, I guess we could say that. And here he is, faithful and true. And now at 80 years old, usually people don't get upset at people that are 80 years old. But boy, Daniel walked with the Lord, and he had some real force in his life, and they didn't like him, and he just left them with the Lord. Did you know that you can be thankful for the very same thing that Daniel was? These principles today are still honored by God and cause a believer's heart to sing. God will answer your prayer. Now, this next one is something, disgrace. Look at verses 8 and 9. Verses 8 and 9. Now, O king, these are still the men setting the plot, establish the decree and sign the writing, that it be not changed according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which altereth not. Therefore King Darius signed the writing and the decree. Have you ever done something and thought, oh, I think I made a mistake? Well, that's what this man did. But once that ink was on that paper, he couldn't change that. What would the signing of this mean to Daniel? Well, it would compel him to be disobedient to God. Secondly, it automatically took him from his place of authority and responsibility in his job. Thirdly, it would mean humiliation and disgrace. What a terrible reward for somebody that's trying to do right. Now you think, if I'm trying to live for the Lord, things are going to go good. Not all the time. Here Daniel's doing his best to do right, and things are getting bad. We also see Daniel was disgraced by his friend the king. And as you read the entire story here, we see from the first verses that Daniel had a good working relationship with King Darius. Daniel's work ethic pleased him to the point he set him above all the presidents. They spent time together. There was plans for Daniel in this government in the future to come. And all of a sudden, it's all put on the line. But now the king had let Daniel down. And yes, the king had tricked him. The king had been tricked, but did you remember it's the king's responsibility to think things through before it's done? I was playing chess with Ricky and Jay. We asked them, what would you like to do? And they said, we want to play chess. And I thought, of all things, we're in the middle of hundreds of acres to walk in, and you want to play chess? So we sat down, as Cody said, and we played chess. And I could have kicked myself. I hadn't played in years. And I made a move, and I thought, well, that was about as bad as it gets. I just gave away pieces that you need to win the game. They thought it was wonderful. We had a good time, and that was the goal of the whole thing. But you do something, you think, oh, I should have thought about that. That was the king's responsibility, to think before he did this. So look with me at verse 14. Then the king, when he had heard these words, was sore displeased with himself, and set his heart on Daniel to deliver him. And he labored till the going down of the sun to deliver him. Yes, he knew he had done wrong. Can mistakes cost friendships? Can mistakes cost you disgrace? Yes, they can. And despite of all of it, It did. Look back up at verse 10. Now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went into his house, and his windows being open in his chamber towards Jerusalem, he knelt down. He knelt upon his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks. He gave thanks. He didn't wring his hands and worry. He said, Lord, I'm worried about this. No, he's giving God thanks before his God as he did aforetime. He's thanking God. He said, Lord, I already know you know what's going to happen. If I'm faithful, you will be faithful to me. I can just hear him talking to the Lord. Sometimes all a person can do is just do the right thing. If you don't know what to do in life, just do the right thing. Just find yourself working at trusting God. And then this one, of all, I think the hardest one maybe yet, is Daniel gave thanks at time of death. Look at the first part of verse 16 with me. Then the king commanded, and they brought Daniel and cast him into the den of lions. I don't know how many times I've thought about that. Have you ever allowed your mind to be cast into the den of lions? What would that have been like? Do you all like to go to the zoo and see the lions? No? Yes? Maybe? Would you like to pet one? Well, Daniel didn't have a choice. There he was, face to face with these animals. Yes, Daniel walked right into the jaws of death, we could say, and yet it did not stop him from thanking God in his heart. See, this was done before they put him in the lion's den. He had already thanked God and given his life away. He said, Lord, if I die, I'm coming home. It was already settled before he ever got there. See, didn't wait up to the last minute. He had a peace in his heart. He knew what God was going to do. He was going to do his will. Daniel was resolved to that. He was happy no matter what happened. He knew whether life or death that the Lord was with him, and he could have peace in his heart, for this was God's gift to him. Isn't that amazing? We can do the same thing when hard things come your way. Before it happens, settle it in your heart. Say, Lord, I give this to you. There's been times I've woken up so nervous, I just could hardly breathe, that I didn't want to start the day knowing what I knew was going to happen. I should have taken time before I went to bed and got it all settled. I would have been able to sleep and not worried about the next day. We need to learn this principle from Daniel. Look at verse 23. It says, Then was the king exceeding glad for him, and commanded that they should take Daniel up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no manner of hurt was found upon him, because he believed in his God. There's the simple answer. Faith changed the whole thing. Genuine faith will fill one's heart with praise, rejoicing, and thanks. Now, please know, this issue of trying the Christian faith is on the rise. We've been talking about this. I talked about it to the men there at men's camp. It's hard to live a consistent Christian life and keep oneself unspotted from the world. To walk with God in correct separation seems to be strange to many people. Many people say they're Christians, and yet they're turning around and they're doing the very thing that gratifies their own flesh. You see, this isn't pleasing to the Lord. Stop and listen to the Bible. God is calling Christians to faithfulness. He wants us simply to delight in obeying the Lord and doing right. Nothing is to keep us from doing God's perfect will. 2 Timothy 4:5, But watch thou in all things, endure afflictions, do the work of an evangelist, make full proof of thy ministry. Live for Jesus, not for today's desires. Live for Jesus, not for today's desires. Keep in mind standing before him. Again in 2 Timothy 4, Henceforth there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord the righteous judge shall give me at that day, and not to me only, but unto all them also that love his appearing. Let's bow our heads together. What a thought. Can we be people that thank God through these things, through depression and through death and through darkness? through difficulty, all these different things, we find Daniel thanking the Lord, praising the Lord. Deceitfulness, all of these things came his way. It wasn't a bed of roses for Daniel. In fact, he was one of the men that had it harder than any of the Old Testament men, but he stood true. Praise is always the right thing to do. You thank God. Thank God for what is not going well in your life. Say, Lord, thank you for it. What am I supposed to learn? And help my eyes to be opened. The psalmist said, what shall I render unto the Lord for all his benefits to me? The answer, well, we yield our body and soul and spirit always to God. This is how you show serious thanksgiving. I hope you'll really ponder this. I don't know how your family celebrates Thanksgiving, but I hope there's a time that you and your wife, your children get together, you open the Bible, and you just take time to let everybody give thanks. And you share with them this principle that even though sometimes things may not be going well, we need to thank God for this moment. Thank God. Sometimes Thanksgivings, you visit the hospital, all sorts of things can happen. We thank the Lord for all things, knowing that he works them all together for his honor and glory in your life.